Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this Tuesday night, or actually I guess it's Wednesday morning, in-depth ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. So it's a little bit after midnight here in Great Falls, Montana. I got in a little late, and no, it's not because I went to the sip and dip. It's just some flight delays just got me in a little bit later tonight. But I've been looking here once I got into the hotel at this radar animation. I think you're going to see some pretty amazing things in this. So yeah, the big thing is the large storm system that erupted down here over the lower Mississippi River Valley. I'll show you those storm reports in a few moments. This same system put down quite a bit of snow today from parts of Colorado stretching through, let's see it right here, through parts of Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota. In fact, very heavy snow in parts of Minnesota getting into Wisconsin. But there's some subtle features on here I want you to see. Why don't we start maybe in Texas? As the animation begins, see all the bright flecks in there? That's actually this morning's temperature inversion causing radar beam ducting, making it hit the top of the wind turbines. So if it starts over again, all of that is echo from wind turbine. Then you see later in the day where the surface front moved through. So see it right there, watch. Sliding down, that's where the surface cold front is right now, moving through Texas. Over here, just off the South Carolina coast, you see these echoes here? This is actually chaff, right, that military aircraft can put out, and you're seeing it here on radar. It's pretty amazing to see that. And then on the over here on the west coast, I want to take you to Nevada. And as we start this over again, you're going to see several blocked beams right there. See all those? What happens is there's a very large military base here in this part of Nevada, and whenever the military doesn't want the local radar network to be able to detect stuff that they are doing, they'll just block the beams, and that's what you've got going on here. So there's a bunch of amazing things in addition to this massive storm system that ripped through the midsection of the country today and did a lot of damage. In total, so far, just with this one storm system, over 100,000 cloud to ground lightning strikes. Normally in any system like this, that's only accounts for about 20% of all the lightning strikes, but very, very active. In fact, I was just watching this evening to see where the storms were moving through parts of Alabama, coming out of Mississippi, and still very, very active with producing quite a bit of lightning. Now, storms did stretch farther to the north. They hit parts of Tennessee and Kentucky. They're actually in Wisconsin as well earlier today, stretching back into Illinois as that front came through. But so far, looking at the storm reports this evening, we've had about 80 reports of severe weather, including 22 tornadoes. This is going to continue to change as the night goes on and we get more reports from the day here. But a very active day in terms of severe weather here as we've opened up a pretty large sector to some unstable air. Tomorrow, this is going to push farther to the east. I'll show you that in just a few seconds. But I was looking at some of the hail data here, and you can see some of these storms were putting down up to 2-inch hail coming out of Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, and some hail reports into parts of Kentucky as well. So there was some damage here due to that. Now, on the back side of this, just taking a look at the last 24 hours of total accumulated snowfall, very heavy snow came out of Colorado, and it spread over parts of Nebraska into this part of Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. And again, near Minneapolis today, some places picked up over 6 inches of snow and actually shut the airport down for a little while. Now, just seeing this, I wanted to kind of show you the whole system here on satellite. So let's just take it back. Here we go. So this is sunrise this morning on Tuesday. The destabilization of the atmosphere here as the shortwave sits right over this area. Storms start to pop here, several discrete supercell thunderstorms. And as the night wore on, those storms continued just to push farther and farther to the east. And so we're going to watch out for tomorrow for these storms to be in this area. But one other thing did happen today that kind of caught our attention, and that is here on the Big Island of Hawaii. So this is the volcano, and we're looking here at particle size. So what we're seeing here is the eruption of this volcano, and the satellite can actually detect the aerosol, not the aerosols, but the particulate matter, that's being put into the atmosphere. So just a very interesting day today in terms of weather and also some geological features that we're keeping a close eye on. Okay, so where is it all going? So, on Central Time, this is about 1 a.m. Central Time. This first system is heading east. We have wind advisories out here across parts of the eastern Corn Belt into New England. We still have the severe thunderstorm watches down here and the tornado watch that's still in place. And there's flood watches and warnings out given how heavy rainfall we've seen this. We'll take a look tomorrow morning at the total amount of rain. But then we're just basically watching for the next system to come in. And you can see here we have winter storm warnings out for much of Washington and parts of the Cascades in Oregon, and then down here into the Sierra Nevada and the Klamath Range here in Northern California. We still have several systems lined up to come through the country, and they're going to be entering kind of running over a larger ridge that's in the Gulf of Alaska. We'll talk more about that in a second. Let's just go to the 0Z NAM run from Tuesday night, and this will just show us. We're going to start this about 11 o'clock, so this is where the storms were. We're going to watch through tomorrow morning. Those storms press through the Carolinas, down here into parts of Georgia, and eventually through Florida as well. There'll be locally heavy rain here on the northern side of this, and pretty sharp temperature change with very strong winds coming out of the northwest behind it. And that system pulls through New England throughout the day tomorrow and tries to exit by tomorrow night. Behind it, we will see lake effect snow again, coming off the Great Lakes with those cold northwesterly winds ripping across this area. Now, as that system leaves and high pressure tries to build back in here with some cold air, you probably saw the next system already coming into the northwest. So let's take you back there and show you that one. So let's start this off Tuesday night, again, when this animation begins, and go through Wednesday when a lot of you will be watching this. And it's putting quite a bit of snow through parts of Washington, coming over to the northern Rockies. And I'll be anxious to see this. I'm in Great Falls today, but I'll be in Coeur d'Alene on Wednesday night to Thursday. So we're going to go see how much snow we got there. And as this goes forward, this really just targets right in here to parts of Oregon, pulling moisture over the Blue Mountains, getting into the northern Rockies of Idaho. That's a great trajectory to return moisture to what is often a very dry place in Oregon. And then we see that stream of moisture just hit the Klamath Mountains in the Sierra Nevada. It's a very narrowly focused band that delivers rainfall to the Central Valley of California. It just continues on the northern rim of the Snake River Valley here after going over the kind of parts of the Intermountain West. Now, taking you all the way out to Friday morning, we're going to watch for that system to start to eject. We need to talk about where this is going to go. But before I do that, can I just kind of construct for you what I think the bigger picture is right now? It has a lot to do with this. The jet stream right now is retracted and a bit more on the equator side of things. And it's really having a difficult time extending beyond this area, so right in through there. It's breaking up into kind of a split flow that comes over Alaska, and systems are diving in across the country like this. So that's what that jet retraction means, is that it's staying very close to Japan and not breaking its way all the way across the open Pacific Ocean. So to see that, I'll just show it to you here in the European model run. We're seeing this piece right here, and then weaker flow across the rest of the Pacific Ocean. As I play that forward, we don't seem to lose that. Now, we could blame this on a lot of things. I certainly think that the MJO staying in phases 6, 7, and 8 and kind of returning there, those are common phases to have strong jet stream winds coming off of Japan and not extending all the way across the open Pacific. But it is not a setup that eliminates the chances for moisture getting into, for example, the Pacific Northwest or California. It's just not the pure, strong flow that can extend and just completely soak the region and pack up the mountains full of snow. But going all the way out there, December 9th and 10th, this is what I'm seeing. Screaming jet stream coming off the Himalayas ends about here. Weaker flow. It comes back together and then builds into a large ridge going over Greenland. And that's something we really got to be talking about here, is what's going on over Greenland. Because as we play out what the upper level height pattern looks like, right now we have our cross-polar ridging from the Bering Sea to the Barents Sea and getting into Scandinavia. And then we see the troughs like this. So this is where we're building up our coldest air into Siberia and the western half of North America. And as we play it forward, we're just going to continue to see that through this weekend. What'll be shifting, though, once we get past this weekend, is where that ridge is going to fully establish. And so instead of staying here over Alaska, we've displaced the trough farther inland into central North America. We now see what we call the negative phase of the North Atlantic Oscillation really showing up in earnest. That's a big ridge building into Greenland. Now, why we need to talk about this is that large ridges in Greenland tend to let systems come out across the United States like this. It tends to produce a very active storm track up the East Coast, and it's one that's capable of delivering quite a bit of cold air to Europe. So we've got to question how long that particular piece of the flow is going to be around, because it's certainly there over the next and developing over the next 7 days. And if I play this all the way out to December 10th, 11th, 12th, we're getting a really classic setup of the negative phase of the North Atlantic Oscillation. So big ridge here and a trough that just sweeps across to the south of it. This does not shut things down for the West Coast either. It's not nearly as strong of a flow into the West Coast, but this is certainly a pattern that's going to be affecting much of North America going forward. So let's go take a look at how the models are responding to this. We're going to do our typical multi-model analysis, the GFS on the left and the European on the right. And we've already seen this first system. So this is the one that throughout the day on Wednesday pulls up into parts of Ontario and Quebec and brings the heavy precipitation through the East Coast. Okay, we've already looked at that one. So let's now focus on the multi-model analysis of the second system coming into California on Thursday through the middle of the day, getting into Friday. Now the models are ejecting this system somewhere in the Central Plains, likely Nebraska. And the European model, which is very typical, is a bit slower on the ejection. The GFS is a bit faster. And so we see this pulling out, and the big difference here is that the European lingers a bit more snow farther back to the west. The GFS pulls the heavy snow through the Red River Valley of the North. We'll take a look at those snowfall totals in a second, and pushes it a bit farther into Ontario. Now, we could see on the southern side of this on Friday more storms down here. This can also bring more rain to parts of the eastern Corn Belt, and then another very sharp change in temperature to the Midwest as high pressure builds in and very cold air arrives. So models are in pretty good agreement about that system moving through the eastern part of North America, leaving a longer front Saturday morning through the East Coast. So expect rain along this, and that front tries to clear out by Sunday. But as you can see, the models leave it. See, it's sitting right there, meaning we're going to keep pulling moisture out of the Gulf, hitting from central and eastern Texas all the way through parts of the southeast with this particular setup. Now, if you noticed at that same time, if I just go back here real quick, Saturday into Sunday, another low is diving down into the western United States, and that low is also expected to kind of follow this very familiar trajectory. And if it comes out here into the Central Plains, it could be more snow for this area. There will be plenty of cold air for it to work with. Look at the dominant high here in the European. It's also there in the GFS. The models don't fully agree on where the heaviest precipitation is going to be. The GFS is very keen on developing some what we call deformation here, so flow coming in like this and like that. The European has a more open wave, so broader shielded precipitation, but basically over the next week there are three big systems to contend with. And you can see the difference between what we have for deformation and an open wave here moving through the Great Lakes states in the European model. So that's just the next week to 7 or 8 days, or 8 or 9 days, excuse me. So if I give you the total numbers, this is the European model's prediction of total precipitation through the next 7 days. And here's the GFS. So notice how much drier the GFS is in certain places, like for example, the plains in through here. And if we just do a quick comparison between the two models, you can now see where that the GFS stretches out that front and lets it linger here, whereas the European's got a broader shield of precipitation moving through much of the Midwest and Great Lakes states. The good thing about this pattern is it continues to deliver more moisture to the western United States. Now, just to let you know how the models are performing over the last week or so, the European models had about a 2% advantage on its skill score using upper level height anomaly correlation. But honestly, both models are providing quite useful information on how this pattern is going to go. So what I want to let you know is there's a lot to be watched, especially in this area as we get into next week on where that frontal boundary may set up. All right. So from here, let's talk about the snow side of this. And we're just going to use the European model to kind of pin down some numbers. So this was the system moving through tonight. So we're seeing here through Wednesday. And as you watch the next big system come into the west, we'll get a detailed look at this. Remember, that one does eject almost in the same locations, right in through here, delivering some snow into eastern Montana, possibly here into the Dakotas, a couple inches are possible, and then reinforces the snow that's over Minnesota and Wisconsin. Now remember, there was another system that comes out. There it is, next Monday, Tuesday. That's system number 3. And you can see that it puts down its snow track almost in the same location. We're getting a lot of consistency here with what we're looking at. So if I just kind of told you, we'll show you the west in a second, but you have a system that comes to like this later this week, and then next week one that does like that. And that's where we see the heaviest snows in the lower 48 here. Now in the west, over the next 7 days, we're going to see up to 2 to 4 feet of snow in the Cascades and the Klamath Mountains in the Sierra Nevada, really packing it in. Remember that the flow that's coming in is going to hit the Blue Mountains, it's going to hit the Rockies here in Idaho and really deliver some decent snow there. There's also the chance of picking up 2 to 5 inches in parts of Montana out of this as well, with heavier snows also getting down here into the Central Rockies, which, by the way, today there was lake effect snow over Salt Lake City. Kind of a neat thing to see here. So that's a good snowpack building up into the west. By the way, just to keep you up to date, this is our latest snowfall departure map. So through this point in the season, we do have good early season snowpack building in the west. Of course, quite a bit in the lake effect region, but our deficit area is right here in the plains where we've missed out on a lot of this snowfall. Just kind of keep you posted on what's happening in the west. This is the San Joaquin stations. They're currently in California right on average for this point in the year. But what needs to happen this year is that we need to have above average snowpack and not spend time below this average curve here. That would be detrimental to California's reservoir strength. Farther to the north, they're just a little bit below the average, currently at 4.2 inches on average. But I do think that this early winter is going to help build this up a bit more and kind of get us away from the worry of it being one of these very, very dry years like we've seen as of late. So let's also look at this precip one other way here before we get into week 2. This map shows you the probability over the next 10 days here of getting at least an inch of total accumulated precipitation. So a lot of this is coming from the first system. But remember, the second and third delivered as well. And you can see the decent onshore flow here in the west. In fact, let's step it up, by the way. This was 1 inch. Let's take it on up to chances for 2 inches. So the 2-inch liquid equivalent here, oops, it switched model runs on me. There we go. The 2-inch liquid equivalent out 10 days, it's pretty high in this area, right in through here and also along the west coast. Now on the other side of this, who's missing out on the rainfall? So how about a chance at looking at who's getting less than a ½ inch? And that just continues to be problematic for our harder winter wheat belt parts of the plains here stretching down to the southeast. Florida's also looking quite dry in this pattern as well. So let's take a look at how things shape up by day 10. Now, by day 10, this is when we build the big Greenland block that's a part of that negative North Atlantic oscillation. So see what the jet stream's going to be doing here, and then moving across the open Pacific. So the week 2 precipitation anomalies are going to show that. We're going to have to be on the lookout for systems to come up the east coast as that block develops. The models show drier conditions for the northwest, but I have to call this into question given that there's still decent flow coming off the Pacific that I think could still deliver better moisture there. So we'll watch it all carefully. It is not a slowdown by any means in this pattern getting here into the midpoint of December. Now, before we look long range, let's talk about the temperatures because we were very warm in the warm sector of this system today, but as I said, the cold air really quickly settles in behind this. So this is looking at Wednesday's highest temperatures when a lot of you will be watching this. As we go forward into Thursday and Friday, ahead of that next system, there's another warm sector that opens up. But we're going to watch from Friday into Saturday and Sunday. Here is the evolution of this pattern ahead of when the deep troughs of cold air that are sitting over the western parts of North America get unleashed and move. So you'll notice by next Monday, the warmth that's here, that's quickly going to be replaced. Take a look. As we go out here with our 5-day moving average of temperatures, you see that as we get into that first week of December, the pattern develops the large ridge over Greenland, which allows the colder air to move when the trough starts to advect or move farther to the east. So that will start to bring in much colder air out of the Canadian prairie through the north interior of the United States, leave it anchored in the west, and bring in more frequent shots of colder air through the plains, Midwest, all the way to the east coast. So this is the consequence of building a big ridge over Greenland going into the month of December. This is also going to affect Europe's temperatures. Same idea here, a 5-day sliding window. Notice the cold anomalies beginning to show up for parts of, the British Isles here, getting into northern Europe, and also over this part of Russia. A lot of cold air is coming in as this pattern begins to make that kind of shift overall. Now, when we go and look long term, I thought it'd be just important for us to do a very quick model verification. So I just went back to the beginning of November and said, well, did the model predict November? Well, because you can see it was aggressive on the wetness in the west. It did show an area coming from the southwest into the plains that could have been drier. It had parts of the eastern Corn Belt down into the southeast dry, but a wetter corridor here and across parts of the Canadian prairie. And I can vouch for this. There's quite a bit of snow on the ground, for example, in Saskatoon from this setup. It's also quite wet in Florida. Now, let's compare it to the last 30 days. We can see that, shrink that up, that, this corridor was drier. We were wetter right into here, and there was the drier in the eastern Corn Belt. So there was, I'd have to say that the model, got several of these pieces right. We just do this because if we're going to trust it going forward, we need to know its performance in the past. So here's the big thing. Over much of the next 15 to maybe 20 plus days, that ridge that's in that's over Greenland seems to be a consistent feature. So this is the North Atlantic Oscillation, and it's going negative into next week, and it's going to hang out down there for a while. This all the way out to the 20th of December. We just continue to see it staying below average. So that means Greenland ridge stays in place. And I think that's going to be the most dominant factor. So here it is, days 7 through 14. If we just play this out fully into week 3, we still kind of see those higher heights in this area and the broad trough in this region. And just playing this farther out there all the way, to, let's just start January. The pattern wants to put more ridging here and keep broader troughing that comes out on this side. So what do we end up getting out of that? Let's come down to the United States. Let's look at a 30-day precipitation window, and let's just take it out there. How about all the way to January 10th? This means quite a bit of interior cold coming out of the Canadian prairie and into the west, so more snow, better chances for bringing in precip. Systems will keep ejecting right here. And if you see this drier region into here, I think the models are biased way too dry given what we're seeing with the big Greenland block. I think that there's going to actually be more chances for precip coming in from Texas through the Mid-South, through the Mid-Atlantic into parts of New England. I think we're going to see more than what the model's advertising. On the temperature side of it, though, I tend to agree with this. I think that the storehouse of colder air will be in the west, but it gets let out as the big ridge builds here. That's just a typical result of a big Greenland block. Okay, what's also going on in the tropics? Well, we do continue to see strong easterly wind bursts, but the westerly wind bursts are kind of fanning out a little bit. And what this is doing is it's allowing the MJO to kind of continue to curl around. So it's in phases 6 and 7 quite a bit, but it also has to dip back down here into null. So we're going to take the fact that it's in null space right now kind of a bit off the table. But if it returns back to phase 6 and phase 7, that is where we just came from, which, remember, there's about a 10-day lag on that. That's where all this activity's been coming out of the Gulf of Alaska from. So that means I don't think the pattern's going to slow down at all, at least based off of the tropical connection going into the month of, fully into the month of December. And you combine that with the Greenland blocking, we now talk about quite a bit of cold air that can be in place. Since we're talking about cold air, we should also just discuss here quickly that over the next 5 days, as that ridge begins to build, and there's also, remember, a ridge that's building here into Alaska, the polar vortex is kind of broken off into a lobe that's going to go over Siberia, so very cold air there. But it's elongated and it's a bit stretched out. And why I'm stressing this is because a year ago, we did not see this. The polar vortex was very tight and quite strong. In fact, let's just go look at it. If I go back to 2021, there it is. See how very nice and tight it was here? That's a strong polar vortex. It's not like that this year. It's displaced and it's already a bit disturbed. So what I'm concerned about is, unlike a year ago where the blue line tells us the polar vortex was stronger than the black line, which is average, right now, that's where the values currently sit. So we're already dealing with the weakened polar vortex. You combine that with higher pressure over the Arctic, a big ridge that's building over Greenland, cold air that's being stored up in Siberia, and cold air that's being stored up in the western half of North America. And then you recall that there's still a tremendous amount of snow covering the northern hemisphere. We just have a setup early this year to give us these very sharp and very defined cold air outbreaks that will likely start for North America, in the Canadian prairie, in Western Canada, in the Western United States, and move across the country. You see a lot of evidence for that. So what is La Niña doing? Just to kind of bring you up to speed on that. Well, it's still here, but do you notice it does not look like it's got the same strength that it has earlier? We've been predicting that getting into December, we will see signs of this fading. One thing I'm looking at here is over the last week, we've already started to see quite a bit more warm water show up. This is just a 7-day trend in the ocean temperatures. So there are some indications here that this La Niña may start to waver a bit as we get into the next 30 days or so. What we need to be watching is looking in the depth of the Pacific Ocean from South America all the way over to Australia for when this warmer water begins to slosh its way back. I think once we get into December and January, you're going to see me showing you this with more of this warmer water coming back, and we're losing these cold anomalies down here. So that's going to be important for North American weather. We'll get new long-range data on the 5th of December, so I look forward to showing you that. But to finish this all up, I do want to at least show you what's going on in South America. We've discussed at length the drought pressures that are down here in Argentina, and the dryness we've seen as of late continues to push them deeper into drought. But there's been a few places, for example, this part of Mato Grosso and even down into Mato Grosso do Sul, that have started to show up drier in Brazil. When you look at some of the data here over the last month, there have been some places over here in western Mato Grosso to Mato Grosso do Sul, and even over toward Sao Paulo, that things have been a bit drier. Now, I don't think it's had a major negative effect on the crops yet, but if we don't get moisture coming back into this area soon, remember the soybeans that are planted in Mato Grosso, they're starting to get harvested at the end of December. So it's a critical time period to return some of that moisture. But how much of a deficit are we talking about? 3 to 4 inches over about a month and a half. So they still got quite a bit of moisture, but there has been a deficit as of late that needs to be accounted for. The current model forecast just released this afternoon here on Tuesday does start to fill this in with better rainfall for parts of Mato Grosso do Sul to Sao Paulo and Paraná. But you notice that the drought pressure just continues into Argentina over the next 10 days, continuing to push that whole risk of staying hot and dry farther down the road. And yes, it will be much above average in terms of temperatures here, cranking up those evaporation rates. And the longer range models, while they do from December 10 to January 10 deliver better rain back to Brazil's central growing areas, even Paraguay, Uruguay, and southern Brazil, the model just doubles down a bit on the drier conditions into Argentina. That's, I think, going to be our number one spot in South America to watch. So I really appreciate you guys giving me a little extra time due to some travel issues. Hopefully this was informative, and we'll talk again soon. Thanks.